No matter how long the winter, spring is sure to follow. Proverb. Welcome to the supplement and happy Easter to all. Today I wanted to provide a whistle-stop roundup of the most recent news and then get into a bit more of a reflective piece as something to think about over the rest of the brief holiday that we have here. As last month, Halifax bucked Nationwide's trend and told us that prices went up in March, not down. Confusion abound. There was a merry conversation midweek on Facebook where a recurring doommonger posted the Nationwide release and then denied the laws of all mathematical and statistical reasoning, citing his superior qualifications as to why this was the beginning of the middle of the end or something like that. These super bears are always up there. And in the great house price, Tray 73 or whatever, they will finally be able to say, I told you so. Once the average house price is over £1 million in the UK, not that £1 million will be anywhere near as many hills of beans as it is today. As usual, when reasoning fails, it's better to disengage. Halifax sees month-on-month improvement of 0.8% and a mere 2% gap between now and the peak in August 2022 on their numbers. As I've alluded to before, Trust might have actually helped buyers here in a strange way, knocked the froth off a racing market and given them perhaps a free year where inflation will have run at a decent single-digit number by the time we get to August, making prices more affordable in real terms. There are other figures of interest, however. Mortgage approvals were particularly low October. February, lower than the steady state market. So, as predicted a number of times last year, what we are really seeing rather than price adjustment is transaction volume adjustment. It takes a period 4-6 months or more for confidence to return after the kick in the guts that was the spike in mortgage rates in late September and October 2022. There were also a lot of transactions brought forward during COVID and the stamp holidays, of course, so the future, when it becomes the present, has to pay those back at some point. That's today's image. Further nuance, however, is that January's figure was slightly above predictions and February's figure was well above, around 8% above consensus. That's significant because, like the economy, the housing market isn't behaving like the wounded beast that predictors thought it would. The doomsayers are, once again, in the balance, scratching their heads at their poor predictions. As we go into Q2 23, we need to also remember, in the past, in similar type situations, the housing market problems have been staved off for some time. The music keeps going for a bit longer. There's definitely lower demand here. Although putting the ONS and the Bank of England figures together, there were 76,920 transactions over 40k in the UK in February 23, and a few below that, of course. The 43,540 mortgage approvals puts quite a bit less in the pipeline if we assume 30% cash buyers as a typical historical figure, would mean around 62.2k agreed sales and perhaps 80 dropping out of the pipeline, 70 plus. Those below 40, which wouldn't be a typical February. The data doesn't lie. There's definitely a transaction volume slowdown from the past couple of years, but of course, that was inevitable. More importantly, the mortgage approvals are around 25% lower than the historical number, which would see 850k or so transactions performed this year is not a bad estimate. Quite a bit lower than average. The Bank of England commentary is quite enlightening, actually. And so I've replicated it here. Its approvals for house purchases in the United Kingdom, an indicator of future borrowing, increased to 43.5 thousand in February 2023, up from a revised 39.6 thousand in January, which was the lowest since the early stage of the pandemic in May 2020, and one of the weakest figures since January 2009. It also compared with market expectations of 40.5 thousand. This was the first monthly increase in approvals for house purchases since August 2022, despite the rising cost of living and higher borrowing costs, Meanwhile, approvals for remortgaging, which only capture remortgaging with a different lender, also rose to 28.1 thousand in February from 25.4 thousand in January. The effective interest rate, the actual interest rate paid on newly drawn mortgages, increased by 36 bps to 4.24% in February. The rate on the outstanding stock of mortgages rose by 10 bps to 2.64%. You'd expect January to have been hit the hardest by the Chemiquicide budget. 3-4 months hence, give or take, right in the sweet spot. Have a look at the other stats. Quite a few switching lender, although data on product transfers would be incredibly useful side by side. Effective rate, cost of credit, up by nearly 10% in 0.36 on top of 3.88 to get to 4.4. And the overall rate on the outstanding stock of mortgages up 4% to 2.64%, which will be all weighted on those new entrants to the market, of course. So on average, we pay 2.64% at the moment, but new loans were paying 4.24%. As I'll write this, those remortgaging at 75% or below, which will be the vast majority for remortgaging, especially at this time, can get around 4.1%. But of course, not everyone can get the best rates. 90% and 95% are facing best prices of 4.75% and 5.3% accordingly below the stress test, but well above the average. And this is, of course, the major factor choking demand. What that lot realistically proves is that this is a puzzle with mixed signals, a trappy market. For those looking to expand portfolios, that should be a good thing. These markets take time, effort, skill, and patience. And as always, solid risk management. The next credit crunch seems to have abated for the moment, with little new news on the banking crisis on that front. That's the tale of the tape for now. On to the promised piece on reflection, and I wanted to spend some time talking about efficiency. I spoke of productivity not too many weeks back, and the first bridge to cross here is, what's the difference? Well, productivity measures output given the input costs, whereas efficiency measures how well you use all of your resources to get a task done. It might be that the answer is there, but those resources are not used because of a lack of understanding or training. So often I see people signed up to several data aggregation platforms, for example, whereas the reality is they don't even have the time to use one properly or put the right level of time into learning one of them properly. They just get more aids when help is not the answer. Focus and training is the holy grail of this sort of conversation, is espoused by Tim Ferriss and his 4-hour work week. An incredible commercial success as a concept. Forbes ripped him a new one in 2019 when they described this philosophy as everything that's wrong with the modern world, because there was too much perception as reality injected into the thinking. However, the catch in the title is the idea of being so efficient as to be able to get a meaningful working week squeezed in to only 4 hours. Reality often bites, as does boredom. I'm not ready to only be working 4 hours a week just now. Aside from anything else, it's too enjoyable sometimes. Still, likewise, there's no point hanging around in the office or at the computer when there's nothing left to do. There's no point writing the supplement in 4 hours if 2 will do. So part of the key is always not having too many tools at your disposal. The process of choosing which one is always a waste of time and effort. If you are efficient, you know what you need when you need it, how much of it you need, and act accordingly. You don't even need to think that hard. It becomes hardwired into your decision making with enough effort. And what was once a system, 2 task borrowed from the great thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, can become a system, 1 task. That's you and your efficiency. You can at least control that if you have the appetite and the discipline. What about others? That's where things start to go wrong, right? This is, to an extent, Why phenomenality nudge unit exist? Small nudges towards certain types of behavior, reward programs, positive reinforcement, alternatively solid and clear management structures, personal development plans, a strong culture, an organization that knows where it is going, gets the staff to buy into that. You can't control it, but you can influence it, and that's the point. Whilst you can measure as much as you like, leadership starts at the top. Management structures will not protect a weak leader. People rebel, leave, do anything but their job if the leader is weak. There is no such term I'm aware of as yet in the personal development space, efficient leadership, but it should be a strong consideration. One great example was put on the table in the past couple of weeks by a business partner of mine. She organised a meal to take everyone in the business, even those who work one shift a week, in order to say thank you to them and share in some of the fruits of everyone's labour and our risk. It means so much more than anything else when it is not an empty gesture. That's great leadership, but it is also efficient. A couple of times a year, that suffices, and that one variable that everyone has the same amount of time is still preserved. The flip side to this can be when such gestures become expected and then the absence of them for any reason causes disquiet. This is a sign normally that the team is not right and the culture is not set as it should be. But again, the efficient leader would have managed expectations or set a target that needs to be hit before the next event, perhaps even chosen by the staff team with limited or no input from owner smangers. It would be folly to throw out the Ferris with the bathwater here. We should all be aiming to be efficient, but not in a fake it till you make it way, in a real and an authentic way, and that is what will lead the team into battle again and again until the war is won many times over the course of a successful career. I'm going to take a pinch of my own advice here and be efficient, and let you be efficient with the rest of your Easter. As always, keep calm and carry on.